Have you noticed all of the return to office talk that's been going on lately? And the reasons are usually something based around employee productivity or camaraderie, office morale, things like this that they seem to be in favor of the employee and it's in your best effort to be back in the office. Well, what if it was for a different reason? Truly. Let's take a look at this guy's take and, see what we think.
I made this video which went viral not too long ago explaining that one of the main reasons you're being asked to return to the office is because middle-aged men don't get on with their wives. And I think this is absolutely true, but judging from the comments, some people perhaps thought I was just being provocative. So I'd like to explain just how that comes about. So imagine that you are a man who has worked his way up to a senior leadership position. And I say man because the majority of senior leaders still are men.
Facts.
And now you're walking up and down the corridors in your suit and tie, and you feel important. And that I know that being respected is an important part of why people become leaders, because I interview them, and that's what they tell me. And so people want to hear from you. People want to arrange coffee catch-ups with you. They want to be mentored by you. Your buddies want to have lunch to discuss big, important topics. People laugh at your jokes. In meetings, people look to you to hear what you have to say before anybody else. And of course, there's the kind of the banter and, the work wife. And maybe you get to have some drinks with clients at the end of the day. And then you go home to your wife who tells you about how tough her day has been. And you talk about how tough your day has been. And you feel that all is well with the world.
Because up until that point, you were allowed to go off to your fantasy world and then come back home to reality for a few minutes. Not a few minutes, but comparatively, your home life is this big. Your work life is this big.
And then along comes the pandemic. And now you're just another person in a t-shirt on a Zoom call. People aren't scrambling to spend time with you in quite the same way. You're not quite sure what it is that you're supposed to be doing. You don't feel important in quite the same way. Worse than that, Judith from next door keeps popping around to chit-chat with the wife. The kids are screaming while you're trying to have calls. You keep yelling at her to try and sort it out. You expect her to help out with stuff. It's like, do people not realize how important I am? I've got a job to do. I can't be loading the dishwasher. I'm not here to take the cat to the vets. And these are people who are desperate to get back to the office.
This is not unplausible. But would someone actually admit to this openly? Probably not. Because openly, it's all about employee morale. It's all about productivity. The numbers show when they're in office that, our productivity is through the roof. And, when they're working remote, it's the numbers are down, whatever it is. But the reason I think there is some truth to this is because my previous career, I owned a few fitness studios. So my personal training studio, right? These same CEOs and C-suiters and, these executive types, they would come into my studio like any other prospect, and the meeting would typically go something like this. I would say, why are you here? How can I help you? And they would give me some pie in the sky fantasy that everybody typically says, and they need that done by yesterday. So I would say, hey, how are you? Pleasure to meet you. And, why are you here? What can we do for you? And they would say, oh, I need to lose 15 pounds and get a six-pack, and I need it by tomorrow afternoon. It usually goes something like that. But once you start peeling back the layers, then you start to find out, oh, this person is completely human. And all of that power dynamic that they benefit from at their office, their real life isn't like that. So I think what this guy is explaining, I've seen it. And I have seen more than my fair share of C-suiters and executives from the New York City working environment, Fortune 500 companies, etc., startups, whatever it is, tech companies. They would all come to my office, and there's a few of them that I would recognize from media or, something I saw on, some business news thing or whatever. They're recognizable. But when they sit down and I start peeling those layers back, life is in shambles. Can't hold down a relationship. Kids don't really like them or know them beyond just the financial things that they provide. And so you hear these things and it's like, okay, you're human. You're normal. But they go home to that. But then when they go to work, they're treated like a rock star. You're no different than the Beatles. You're no different than Michael Jackson when you're at work. So why wouldn't I want to continue the fantasy? So that's why I say I can see it as very plausible, because I've seen these people and I've seen them behind closed doors, and I've developed, a more intimate relationship with them, a more personal relationship, well beyond something that their employees would have with them. And so you over the course of them being a training client, you start to hear them talk about different things and the things they complain about, and etc. And I'm standing there, if I'm the one training them, I'm standing there barking orders at them and go do this and go do that. They don't get that at work. They don't get that. They don't have to deal with that at work, because when they leave reality, they go back to the fantasy world. It's just like social media, how everybody lives the perfect life online, but then when you look at them in real life, it's way different. That's kind of like what he's talking about here. It's that work is the fantasy, home is home. Home is reality. So I could totally see this being a plausible thing.
Because their crown is there. Their identity is there. When they're at home, they can feel their sense of self, who they are, falling apart. Maybe their relationship is under stress. Can't we just go back to the good old days where everybody knew I was important and listened to me, and I was in charge? And that is a big part of the reason you're being asked to go back to the office.
Very interesting take. I totally think it's plausible, but I just don't think anyone would actually fess up to that. But I have heard these things behind closed doors. So that's why I say it's totally plausible. And he makes a good point. Most people derive some sort of value, self-worth, identity, sense of self, dare I say, I won't even say knowledge of self, but they derive all of that from work. That's where you're important. That's where you gain your sense of importance. Your place in this world is based on where you work, whether it's the industry you work in or the company itself. And so when you take that away from someone, you can feel very lost. So yeah, why wouldn't these people champion, we need to be back in the office? I need my audience back. I need my I need my one of my acolytes. I need you guys to, bestow praise upon me, where the place where all of my jokes are, each one lands and I can have 1,000,000 people laughing even though what I said wasn't funny. I can see why you would want to go back to that. It's where you derive your power from, your sense of self. I personally like a hybrid environment. I like to go into the office, but because I like being around other people, but I also like being able to work remotely. And, I don't think either one is necessarily wrong. I just think you need to really consider the extra time that goes into being in the office. When you're working remote, I can get out of bed at 8:15, get ready. I'm in front of my computer 9 o'clock, let's say. I can do things midday. I can run to the post office and come back. I don't have to take off a half day because the post office holds the same hours as my work hours, which makes zero sense. But, I can run out and go do that. I don't have to take time off per se to do that. When you go to the office, I really wonder, and I'd be curious to hear your comments. I wonder if being in the office 5 days a week, let's say, faces more resistance because of the time it takes to get there, the effort you have to put in order to get there, and then get back home, or if it's more of just the strict, you need to be here. When you would say, well, what's the point of Microsoft Teams? Because again, I have heard more than my fair share of people saying they went into the office and they were in meetings all day. They were in Zoom meetings. They were in Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, whatever your platform of choice is. And then they're on Slack messaging, but they're doing this with people that are right around the corner. And so you're sitting in these meetings and then some other team members are remote, so they're on Zoom anyway. So why am I here? And the other question that I've always asked, if being in the office is, so good, does that mean that we then call up Microsoft and say, hey, all of the R&D that you just invested into creating something called Teams, you can just dump it. Yeah, you can just delete that software now. You can call up Google and say, hey, I know you made Google Meet because the way the world is moving, we're in distributed teams and we're all, working some sort of hybrid schedule. But yeah, return to office so you can just get rid of Meet. Or, Slack. Hey, Slack, you can just eliminate it. You can just delete that software because we're all going back to the office. I wonder, because, why do these programs exist? Why do these software platforms exist? It wasn't like Microsoft or, Google or whomever just woke up one day and they were like, hey, let's make some sort of collaboration tool for people that are sitting right next to each other. No, they see the way the world is going. We live off of, phones and, iPads and MacBook Pros and all these things. Do I really need to be sitting right next to you in order to do this meeting? No, I can go sit around the corner. I can go sit 2 blocks over. I can go sit 3 states over. So then what do we do with these software platforms? Do we just not use them anymore? So, I don't know. These are all just questions, but I think it's a really good point that this guy makes. And I think it's totally plausible. I just don't think anyone would actually fess up to that. But deep down, when you peel those layers back, I'm sure that plays a big part. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.